Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today all around the world, morning, afternoon, evening, I'm sure, for folks. Thanks for joining us for this session of Outsmarting Fraudsters, Key Moves for 2025 Success. If you came here to learn about how fraud is evolving and how you and your team can tackle it next year, you're in the right place. Quick housekeeping items as we kind of move through today's session. I'm Russ Warnloff, Marketing Director at Unit21. And before we get started, I want to address a few quick kind of operational things. First, this session is being recorded and will be available immediately on this same page right after the session. Second, these discussions are really best when they're interactive. So we've got a Q&A and a chat box feature. We encourage everyone to drop in a chat, say hi to everyone. If you have questions, drop those in the Q&A section. On any topic that we discuss throughout. We encourage everyone to drop a question, and we'll have a Q&A section at the end of today's webinar. And also, if you're having any technical issues, hearing us, seeing us, so forth, there is a little troubleshooting sort of module at the bottom of your screen, and try some of those out. Otherwise, you can respond to one of your confirmation emails, and someone from our marketing team can assist you. And last but not least, I'm sure what a couple people here today are eagerly awaiting is around the first 50 who joined us and the Fraud Fighters beanie. So congrats everyone who was in that first 50 cohort. We're going to be looking at our system and see kind of like who joined and when. And if you're from the United States, you're going to be eligible to ship out that beanie. We're going to let folks know in the next 24 to 48 hours. All we need is your shipping address and name, and we'll get those out over the holidays. Great. Moving along here. A quick refresher on Unit21. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with us and our platform, but if you're not, at Unit21, we believe that combating financial crime demands a united front. And we specialize in transaction and real-time monitoring, case management, and consortium that don't just identify, but proactively mitigate risks tied to money laundering, fraud, and other illicit activities. With a simple API and no-code interface, we empower fraud fighters and compliance heroes to detect and prevent bad actors without having to tap engineering resources. And with us today, I'm super excited to be joined by two stellar fraud experts, Alex Vevasovich and Matt Garish. Alex, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Ross, and welcome everyone to our global audience. I see a lot of familiar names. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Alex Vevasovich. I'm the head of fraud risk here at Unit21, fraud prevention practitioner for the past 15 years. Did everything imaginable in fraud prevention, from operations to analytics to consulting, been on the fintech side of things. And in the past 3 years, I've been here with Unit21. Very excited to be here for my very last webinar of 2024.
Thanks, Alex. Matt, how about yourself?
Yeah, hi. Nice to see everyone. Again, appreciate you joining today. My name is Matt Garish. I run the Solutions Architecture program at Unit21. I've been here for about 3 years. I've worked with hundreds of our customers, from your traditional credit unions and financial institutions to fintechs and cryptocurrency organizations, just working through use cases and helping them optimize getting the most of the Unit21 platform.
Wonderful. Thanks, Matt. Well, you definitely got the brain trust of fraud prevention experts here at Unit21, and also how to put that into practice. So excited to have this discussion here today. But before we dive in, I want to kick this off and make things a little bit interactive. So we have a question for everyone on the line. What's your top fraud concern going into 2025? And so you should be able to see a poll that's populating here. I'm seeing responses come in live. Ultimately, your options here are you more concerned about increase in fraud losses, monetary value, increase in fraud volume, so suspicious activity and alerts that you have to process, or more in kind of sophisticated attacks that you are seeing and out of variety of kind of fraud and threat vectors. So we'll let this play out. Don't have any Jeopardy music to play, but if I did, probably be queuing that up right now. Okay. All right, I'm going to close the poll. It looks like most folks have weighed in. So the top concern that I'm seeing is increase in sophisticated attacks. Alex, what do you think about that?
To be honest, I'm not surprised. I mean, just look at 2024. Well, what a year, right? I think it was a true battle between the fraudsters and the fraud fighters, and I understand why people are concerned about sophistication, because sophistication is mostly driven by AI. We always say that fraud evolves, and if you've been consuming my content, you know that I have a different perspective. I say always fraud is shifting before it's evolving, but 2024 really showed us how fraud is evolving, and the best vehicle to have fraud evolving is technology. And one of those technologies that created a huge impact was generative AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And a topic that we'll discuss at length here. Great. Well, at this point, I'm going to kind of take a step back and leave everyone with the two capable hands of Alex and Matt. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Rose. Yeah, so 2024 was busy, really busy. I speak to many of my customers here at Unit21, and all of them sharing the same concerns with me, which is they need to understand better how the cost of fraud will be impacting them in 2025. Now, from what I'm seeing this year, I think for me personally, the three biggest factors that will drive the cost of fraud next year is GenAI as a fraud tool, where we'll basically have the fraudsters keep using those AI tools to create advanced impersonations and automate whatever attacks they are trying to do on financial institutions, create fake personas, fake documentation, fake communications. So all of those actions that were very, very manual for the fraudsters in the past years now can be pretty much automated to 100%. The next vector for me in 2024 is the huge rise in authorized push payments. And AI also has a big part in it, but in general, in this type of fraud, which is usually driven by social engineering scams, where the fraudster is convincing the victim to authorize a payment and send them the money voluntarily, I think we will see more of that in 2025. And for a simple reason, because it works. It's really, really easy to convince someone with the right AI tools to send you the money. And I see no reason for fraudsters to stop doing that. And the third vector, or maybe not a vector, more of a concern that I have, is the rise in fraud as a service. So if you on the dark web, if you're on the Telegram channels, and you've been monitoring what's happening in the past several months, there is a significant presence of organized crime syndicates who really take fraud as a service to the next level, and really offering people who are maybe just taking their first steps in the fraud space, or maybe they don't even know about fraud at all, but they trying to make their first steps and become fraudsters. They really sell those very organized packages of tools and knowledge and manuals on how to do fraud. And I think those three vectors will impact the escalating cost of fraud. Because cost of fraud at the end of the day is not just how much money you directly lost. It also include what's your expense on investigation, human resources, vendor costs, what's the reputational damage if you not protecting your customers the way you should protect your customers. Are you losing those customers? Are they staying in your financial institution? So I do believe that the cost of fraud will rise in 2025, and it's a question that I've been constantly asked by our customers. Let's move to the next slide. All right, so GenAI. I think the impact and the GenAI, let's call it revolution, has incentivized almost like a cat and mouse game between the fraudsters and fraud fighters, making it a significant evolution in the battle against financial crime. On the defensive side of things, we do see a healthy adoption for financial institutions who start taking the first steps into understanding how to leverage AI-powered tools to detect and prevent fraud in real time. But this, I almost call it like an arms race, is not straightforward, because as much as I'm happy to see many financial institutions adopt AI tools, I also see fraudsters adopting exactly the same tools. And it will be, at the end of the day, who knows how to leverage in a much more sophisticated way AI in order to gain some type of benefit. I also think that in 2025, we will see maybe the regulators starting taking some steps, or maybe start saying how ethically to start using AI in order to prevent fraud and in order to prevent money laundering. So it will be very, very interesting. But in general, we believe in Unit21 that the impact will be on volumes. It will be on how sophisticated the attacks are, and what will be the burden of the teams. Because if we believe that the volume is rising because there's automation and the sophistication is rising, so how long the investigation of a potential fraud case or potential scam case will be in 2025, and what burden it will carry to the fraud operation teams. Next slide, please. So fraudsters, they have no reason to not to leverage AI, simply because it allowed them to expand their operations. And the stakes in this race are very high, as the consequences of falling behind for financial institutions and their customers are very significant. What I think we will see from fraudsters this year is they will start combining AI, but with much more traditional fraud that we might never seen before, that we might not be haven't been facing in the past few years. So they will start thinking about, okay, if I can take AI and I can create automation, what type of fraud attacks and what type of fraud vectors that maybe hasn't been associated with AI before, they actually I can go and I can implement and I can continue doing more and more fraud by using those AI tools. Next slide. Now in Unit21, when I work with my product team, one of the things I keep telling my my product managers is that at the end of the day, as a vendor in that space, our goal is to help the agent to make the best possible decision in the shortest amount of time. That's been my mantra for many, many years. And this is how we pretty much try to introduce AI to our customers. Our goal is not to have the AI replace the agent or replace the analyst, but our goal is actually to help the agent to focus on what matters. And here on the screen, you see actually two different use cases of how we have existing customers who are using AI today with Unit21. So on the left side is managing parts of an investigation checklist. And that specific financial institution reported an increase in 10%. Oh, technically, it's a decrease of 10% in the investigation time for the KYB checklist. Well, basically, what they're doing is they have a list of 10 or 15 things that the analyst needs to check in order to pass this customer as a successful KYB. So we were able to create part of that checklist and have the AI agent to do the checks instead of the analyst. And by the time that person opens the alert in order to start the investigation, they already see so many answers on the screen that help them streamline whatever they need to do and focus on what really matters. On the right side of the screen, we have actually a use case where managing the entire investigation checklist has made our customer 10 times faster in the trust and safety space. So when a new applicant joins a marketplace, this specific customer has a list of checks that they do in order to decide what level of participation they allow this end user in the marketplace. And they were able to fully automate that with AI. So now they can accept 10 times more customers because they don't have a bottleneck, they don't have a long queue of review that they need to do, which is really amazing. Next slide. And here is you can see an example, another use case of how we use alert narratives in the exact format. So basically, you can pretty much create a template, write exactly what you expect the AI agent to check, and then just execute it. But I think Matt will be able to show us a live example of how it's done in Unit21.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So I'm going to go ahead and move to one of the demos that I'll be performing through this webinar as it relates to how you would do this within Unit21. So I see some familiar names, I see some unfamiliar names. So let me just go at a high level. For those experiencing Unit21 for the first time, this is the page that most investigators will see when logging into the platform, the My Alerts section. However, if you're a program manager, you can direct either toward the admin alerts, dashboards, queues, or really whatever your preference is. And this is done on an agent by agent level, depending on access within the platform. Now, before we touch upon the AI agent, it's important to note the flexibility and benefit of the functionality that can be added at each point in the investigation, as this is going to be how we incorporate the AI agent. So at Unit21, we have this concept of queues, which you can think as stops on the subway. One queue may be for your level 1 analysts, another queue may be for level 2 analysts, or maybe you have queues for first-party fraud, third-party fraud, check fraud, etc. You can control where alerts originally land, and then through workflows, the investigators can take different actions to move the alerts to different queues. And then most importantly, based off what you just heard from Alex, is each queue can have its own investigation checklist. This is a series of questions that you want answered or addressed about the investigation at those different stops. That is completely customizable. It can be as short, as long, as simple, as complex as you actually want it. So again, why is this important? The AI agent is going to automate based on that investigation checklist set for each queue. So if you have the AI agent investigating account takeovers, for example, you can have another AI agent investigating check fraud, so on and so forth. So let's actually hop into a sample alert here. So you can see here that we have a lot of information. We know the rules that it came from. We know when it was flagged. We know the tags. We also know the entity in question that we're looking to investigate. And if I scroll all the way down, you can see I now have my AI findings page. So there's a little risk assessment at the top. It's going to go through our alert score. Is this likely to be a true positive? Is this likely to be a false positive? All information that is targeted towards your environment based off of past actions, right? So can we get ahead of this? Can we help predict what it should be? And then you can see my AI agent findings. Now, this is a little bit short and sweet, but really what's happening here is this summary is a direct result from this checklist. So again, I have this alert. It's gone to my fraud queue. It is generating the AI agent in the background automatically, answering the questions I have set forth for it. So I can have my investigator take a look at this summary, go through these questions and say, okay, yep, that makes sense. Let's use this in this selection. Let's use this as an input, so on and so forth. The idea here, again, is a lot of your investigations, 50% of that investigation is probably the same each and every time. How do we automate that process so that we're getting to decisions in a quicker fashion? So this is great. I have a little bit summary, but to Alex's point also about the narrative, one of the most tenuous things that I've seen with customers is this idea that you have to record everything that you're doing, because ultimately it needs to be there for the auditors, it needs to be there for the regulators, and that process can take quite some time, and it can take just quite some time. So what we're also doing is we're automating the addition of narratives, which is going to be a summary of said investigation based off of the AI findings. So in this instance, as an investigator, I can go and say, okay, let's go ahead and add this to the narrative. It's going to be working in the background for a few seconds. So maybe I go ahead and check, prior activity, so on and so forth. Let me just pop back in. And great, you can see that this narrative was filled out with the fields that I have prompted it based off of how I set up my narrative templates. So just to reiterate, this is a very simple use case that we're going through today. Everything is fully configurable. For the Unit21 customers, if you're interested, this is out of the box. Your CSM, myself, someone on my team can help configure this for you. And ultimately, this could be tailored for your business and specific use cases. Some of the other cooler things that I have seen in the past as it relates to the AI investigator is, adverse media checks. Is this business actually who they say they are? Does it have the right reviews? Is the zip code actually in the registered state that they placed during the KYC process? So just in summary, the idea here is our fraudsters are quick. We need to get to the point of action as quickly as possible. And the AI agent can do a lot of this work in the background for you and your team.
Thank you so much, Matt. And think about it, how impactful can be at a scale, right? Let's say we have an agent who, starts his shifts in the morning, he can do 100 alerts. Now, if we add those AI checks and we can have those 100 alerts being resolved instead of 8 hours in 6 hours, we have another 2 hours that this agent can go and do deeper investigation where there's really need his attention and really he needs his expertise. Or we can increase the volume of that work for that agent. So instead of doing 100 alerts per day, we can add another 20 alerts per day and be more productive and have more work being done. Now think about it. If you have 100, 200 people who do fraud operations in your financial institution, at a scale, AI can really help you bring down the cost of fraud that we discussed at the beginning of this webinar, and being way more efficient with your fraud operations team, which is amazing. So let's move forward with real-time monitoring. And I think in general, 2025 will bring us one step closer to real-time payments. We start and see more and more financial institutions adopting real-time payments, taking their first steps, starting with business customers. Eventually, it will come down to consumers. And I'm convinced that most of you who read Unit21 content read the Fraud and AML report that we released just a month and a half ago. And one of the key findings in that report were about who is investing in real-time monitoring. And as you can see on the screen, majorities of traditional banks and fintech companies are invested in real-time monitoring. But surprisingly, credit unions lag far behind. So only 26% of credit unions are invested in real-time monitoring, and another 26% of those people who work for credit unions and answered this report have no plan to invest in real-time monitoring. And this, in the long run, can potentially create a problem, because if the industry is moving to a much faster payments and offering much faster services, and you're not even thinking about adopting it, it can be very, very impactful. But let's move to the next slide. One of the things that we do in Unit21 when we work with our customers is we always try to understand what is their internal process of what's the deployment process and what's the reaction cycle. And when we have a customer who use Unit21 for real-time monitoring, we always try to see, okay, if this is the deployment process, how can we make it much shorter? Because it's super important when you operate in real time. And this deployment process, I mean, it's it can be a little different between financial institutions, but it usually come down to those 5 elements that you see on the screen, which is the trend review. So how do you do the data analysis, identify the trend and what is actually impacting you, what's creating fraud. As a result of that, you create a typology. So basically, at this point, you need to define a document how the fraud is impacting the financial institution and which demographic it impacts. Stage 3 is testing. This is where usually Unit21 come into place. So how we take this idea, this typology, and bring it into Unit21, that can look as a rule or maybe a set of rules that will help us to capture this specific fraud trend. And obviously, after the testing if the testing is successful, we move this thing into production. And the last stage is reporting, is how we keep a track on whether or not we actually capturing and stopping the fraud. If it's real time, are we actually preventing fraud losses? And all that can be done within Unit21. And if you already have, if you're already a customer and you haven't spoken about this with your CSM, we're more than happy to start this conversation with you and really help you to shrink this reaction cycle, because the goal is for you as a financial institution is to make it as small as possible, especially if you operate in a real-time environment. Next slide, please. And if you are one of those financial institutions who considering moving into real-time monitoring or taking the first steps in real-time payments, it usually doesn't happen overnight, right? There's usually some stages that you need to go through before you go from fully, asynchronous batch transactions and asynchronous monitoring to go fully real-time. And you have to remember that if you operate in real time and you monitor in real time, then the ops side of the house will be very, very different, because first of all, you need people who will be working 24/7. If you're taking actions and you're impacting customers and you create friction in real time, ideally you need to have a person who sees it in real time and actually knows how to operate that. Because if you think about it, to decline a transaction in real time, it's only the first step. What happens after you decline a transaction? How do you communicate that decline to your customer? And if your customer sends you a feedback, whether it's true positive or false positive, whatever that is, what actions you can take, how you can white label them, or how you can take actions to prevent more transaction from happening. So it's very, very complicated, and it's usually a multi-year process to go from fully batch to fully real time. But this is something that you need to start considering if you are taking your first steps into real time monitoring, how the operation side of the house and how it will create the right friction for your customers, making sure that you're actually serving them and not just creating unnecessary friction.
Great. So let's hop into the next part of the demonstration today. So previously we covered the investigative component, but let's shift gears to what Alexis is saying, and let's talk about how we block fraudsters at the point of attack. How do we be a little bit more proactive in this situation? So if you attended the Fraud Virtual Summit in July, some of you may recall that one of the topics I discussed was this idea of how we go from ideation to creation. And more so, how do we do this in a matter of minutes so that our defenses are out there? So what I will be going through today is I'm going to create a few real-time rules, and you'll see how quickly we can do this, again, in a matter of a couple of minutes. So I'm going to first go over to detection models. And again, for those that have been in Unit21 before, a lot of this is going to look pretty familiar, but I do want to make a few call outs for those experiencing the platform for the first time. So there are 3 different states within Unit21. There's validation state, which you can see down here. This is going to be your historical back test. There's this shadow state, which you could think as an intermediary. And then there's this live state, which is exactly how it sounds. It's live data. We're either blocking entities and transactions in real time or producing alerts depending on whether it's an async versus sync use case. So if I scroll all the way to the top, you can also see this create new rule up here. We're going to spend most of our time in the real-time rules module today, but just know that some of these within the dynamic model builder or these scheduled rules could technically fit your needs depending on your fraud SLAs. You may not necessarily need to have real-time monitoring in place. You may have, let's say, a 24-hour SLA, a 12-hour SLA. So there's a lot of different options, and there's a lot of different answers to potentially the similar questions. And this is all going to be, again, reliant off of your particular use case and what you're trying to get out of the platform, should you be using Unit 21 today. So in this particular example, again, we're going to focus on real-time rules. I'm going to go ahead and name this rule, which is going to be focusing on bot scores. We're going to be looking at country location. We're also going to use amount thresholds, and we'll use 40K here. So this is going to pop up the actual build, the module. So you can see here, first we have what we're going to flag. We're going to flag transactions in this instance, but in the fraud world, it's not always just about those transactions. It could be about action events to us. That's your logins, password failures, etc. Individuals trying to get access to accounts that they should otherwise not have access to. But we'll go ahead and we'll start with transactions. And then next, I'm going to layer in this bot score that's being passed by a third party. And in this instance, this third party has a likelihood of a bot of being a numerical value between 0 and 29. I'm also going to layer in some other conditions, such as I want, in this instance, the sender entity country to not match the receiver entity country. And I know the concept of entity might not be familiar with everyone or to everyone, but for us, it really just means a user, a business, a merchant. You can really define it however you choose within the platform. And then, like I mentioned previously, I also want to put a amount threshold. So in this instance, we're going to do a value of greater or equal to $40,000. Great. So as you can see here, in a matter of about 30 seconds, the rule is now created. So let's go ahead and start processing it. I'm going to click next. In this window, I have two options. One is I can validate, I can do a historical backtest, see if this rule would have flagged any transactions that are flowing into the system today. Or, maybe this is something that we need to get into the wild as quickly as possible. In that instance, I can skip the validation and go straight to activating the rule. So in this instance, I'm going to go ahead and hit validate. It'll take probably 30 to 60 seconds to actually do that historical backtest. And there you have it. Again, in a matter of a few minutes, we have now fully created a typology and a rule to block potential fraudsters in the course of a few minutes. But let's say we also need some other areas of defense here, right? So in this instance, I want to not only monitor what's likely a bot, but I also want to monitor the in-between, right? So in this instance, let's say we have a bot score of 30 to 50, and that's likely human, but for me, that's a little bit on the fence. So I'm going to go ahead and, again, quickly create a new rule to look at those likely humans, may potentially not be human individuals making transactions. And you can see here again, in a matter of a couple of minutes, I have a rule that is now within the validation stage. So what that would look like holistically, if I did not push directly live, is I have this little transactions window down here, and I can see, again, all my criteria. That looks good to me. I'm going to open up one of these transactions. I can see, all right, well, yes, this is above 50,000. That meets that threshold. I can see a bot score of 29, 0 or greater, less than or greater than 29. Okay, that works as well. And then if I was to go into each one of my entity pages, I can see that there is also a country mismatch. So again, I know I was a very speedy demo, but that is the power of the platform. Within a few minutes, we've now created 2 new rules to prevent fraud at the point of attack. And this is something that I see very common with the individuals using the platform, continuously iterating, ensuring that they have their defenses out there, because fraudsters move quickly. We should move quickly as well.
Thank you, Matt. And essentially, if we go back to the reaction cycle, what Matt just showed us is actually stage 3 and stage 4. So how do we do testing and deployment of the rule, of the typology, practically within minutes? I mean, it was probably less than 2 minutes. And if you can act fast and shorten your reaction cycle, you will be probably in a good place, because whenever is a new emerging threat, you should be able to respond to it very quickly. Especially with Unit21, that you no longer have to rely on engineering resources, and you can do everything by yourself. So you empower the fraud ops people to do their job. But yeah, let's move to the next slide. Yeah, exactly, that's it. And just like Matt said, I think when you think about real-time monitoring, the easiest way is to ask, what is real time to me, right? We work with financial institutions who want to be in full control of the authorization process. So obviously for those folks, they're looking for lightning response. They want to be able to get an answer from Unit21 under 250 milliseconds, whether or not to approve the client's transaction on the spot. Some use cases that we have, especially when we have financial institutions moving from legacy solutions into Unit21, something that as fast as 1 hour is considered real time, because they're no longer relying on the next business day is what they used to get from the legacy vendor. And traditional monitoring is also very, very applicable, especially if you use Unit21 for both fraud and AML. If you have rules specifically for money laundering, there's usually no need for you to monitor create those in real time, and you can safely asynchronously generate those alerts and still stay compliant, and making sure that you have a good monitoring in place for all the money laundering activities that you're looking for. I think we can move next to the poll question.
Thanks, Alex. Insightful stuff here. I'm back, and I'm back with another question for the group, just in case you were multitasking. Gonna bring you back. Gonna kind of pull the group. Some of your areas of focus for the next year. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask another poll question here. What are your top investment areas for your fraud program in 2025? Answer options are scam detection solutions, real-time capabilities, not being reliant on engineering, or investment in AI and automation. I know it's hard. You only have to, you only get to choose one, but choose the one that is kind of at the top of your list, and we'll give it a couple moments here for to allow answers to filter in. Super interested.
We should have added all of the above.
Right? Option C, everything. Great. Well, if this was a horse race, I think real time is out in front as we approach the home stretch here. Scams and AI and automation kind of neck and neck for the second priority. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. Alex, your thoughts on this? Real time, as Matt puts it, kind of preventing fraud at the point of attack. Is that a surprise to you?
I think the reason that we see such a slow adoption of real-time payments is that there is still many financial institutions who lack real-time monitoring. Not a single FI will go full real-time without having the true ability monitoring and stopping potential high-risk transactions in real time. So I think overall, yeah, I think it makes sense. It's a great area to invest in.
Awesome. Well, if this is an area or if you see yourself in that need for real-time monitoring, we've got a little CTA button here. If you'd like to learn about real-time and how that would potentially work with your organization and your use case, feel free to grab a demo. We're happy to give personalized demos for anyone who's interested. All right, let's sort of wrap things up here. As we transition into the Q&A section, I want to first give a shout out to our State of Fraud and AML report. A lot of the insights and call outs that we discussed today are from this particular piece of industry research. And this report dives into the evolving landscape of fraud and AML and really kind of the ever-changing challenges that financial institutions and fintechs face. So we surveyed over 350 individuals across fraud, AML, FRAML roles, across a kind of wide variety of banks, credit unions, and fintechs. And in the report is what they had to say. You know, what do they care about? What are they seeing? What are they doing about it? It's a great opportunity to see your peer group and what other programs are doing to beef up their programs in the new year. So there's a QR code here, also a CTA sort of pop-up. If you haven't already downloaded the report, it's a great read, and I definitely recommend it. Great. Okay, let's get to the Q&A section. Thanks to everyone for submitting questions throughout. I'll go ahead and kick things off with the first question. And this one is, what % of manual work can be done, be automated with AI? Let me pass that to Matt.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. I know AI is a relatively new concept to the market. If you would have asked me 2 years ago, I would probably give a lot lower percentage on what can be done with AI. And this is mainly due to how regulators reviewing the technology at that point. So, with that being said, really the goal for Unit21 is to basically address around 90% of the investigation with some human intervention at the very end, right? So if we look at a standard investigation, it could be 30 minutes, it could be 60 minutes, 120 minutes, or whatever it might be. With a lot of those steps being consistent on a investigation by investigation basis, a lot of those steps being pretty standard based off whatever SOP the organization has or whatever it might be. We're really trying to automate that piece and really just having the human come in and say, okay, I think this is great. I disagree. I agree. Let's move it on to the next step in the process. So I think at this point, we can get to around 90%. I think the ultimate goal is to get to 100% of the process. But I think we're a little ways there as it relates to the market overall, especially as it relates to the investigative component.
Great, thanks. And I saw another one come in that's sort of related here. It's really, what's the best way to get started with AI? I think there are a lot of different use cases and applications, and what have we seen that's most effective? Maybe starting kind of smaller, limited scope.
Yeah, that's a great question. So traditionally, the question I ask is there a use case that's causing you, a specific use case in your business that's causing you a lot of pain? Is there's that very repetitive use case that your resources are just spending too much time on, and it's creating kind of a stress on the team overall? I like to start there. I think that's a good way to prove out, is this going to be beneficial for your business? Is this AI use case relevant to your business? From there, we can prove out the value. We can see the results as it relates to reducing the average handle time for these fraud alerts, and then move on to different use cases that may be outside of that initial scope. So that's what we've been traditionally doing, opposed to the whole let's boil the ocean mindset, and it's so far been successful.
Yeah, Alex, I'm curious your thoughts on kind of the practicality there. You're obviously here internally on the vendor side, but you've also been a practitioner running a fraud program. You sort of see things the same way as Matt?
Absolutely. I think it's important for the team to trust that AI is actually doing its job. So you start small. You start with giving it simple tasks, simple checks, simple investigations. And slowly, as you gain confidence in the tool and you realize that it's reliable and it's doing its job and it's working and it's saving you time and it streamlines your operation, you can go and scale and increase step by step.
Great, great. All right. Next up, I'm just looking at the question queue here. Question is, during testing, is production data being utilized? If so, could you share any anomalies or differences observed between the testing and production environments?
Yes, I would. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hop in there, Alex, if you were waiting to answer that question, but
go ahead.
Answer is yes. So that validation state that I was talking about, that's going to have no effect on the actual business processes you have in place, right? We're not creating new alerts. We're not creating any type of load for your system, but we're able to test on that actual live production data, which traditionally is much more accurate than testing data. So my 2 cents when I'm working with customers is let's always test in production. This is the real behavior of your network. This is the real behavior of your users. So let's actually build stuff that's going to target the actual behavior opposed to dummy data or seed data or whatever it is that you may have within the testing environment. Once you're comfortable at that point, then we can push it into a live state. And in real-time rules, what that means is, and I think this is actually one of the second questions you have. So this fail response is essentially that this transaction met the criteria of this rule. And what occurs here is that when that criteria is met, you're going to receive this fail response in under 250 milliseconds, which then allows you to programmatically take action on that user. So hopefully that answers both your questions, but just to reiterate, yes, I prefer production environment. That is the cleanest. And then second, this is what this would look like as it relates to real-time hits. If you're referring to what it will look like for more of your scheduled rules, those scheduled rules are going to produce something that looks like this, which is more of your traditional alert. Your real-time rules can also produce alerts, but that's really up to you on whether you actually want a secondary phase of an investigator to then review the alerts. Let's say if you pause that user opposed to blocking them outright.
Great, thanks, Matt. All right, a couple fraud questions that have just come in. The first one is, what do you suggest for institutions to do when it comes to frontline being more aware of fraud or a client being scammed? Alex, I'll pass this one to you.
Yeah, so here I think the key to success is we have to start looking at the customers as assets, because historically we always treated our customers as victims, and the only one who doesn't treat them as victims is the fraudsters. The fraudsters see an asset. You have to understand that this asset, this customer, he has X amount of value, and that value will be drained by the fraudster as fast or as slow as they like to do that. We need to train our frontline people to understand that those peoples are being treated as assets. And this is the first step in to understand that detecting a person who's been scammed is slightly different than detecting someone's card's been compromised or somebody deposited a bad check. You need a different mind state.
Yeah, good call out there. Okay, I think kind of narrowing down from different kind of fraud vectors and utilization of AI. Next question is, what role, if any, do you see AI playing in relation to coerced fraud or traditional identity fraud? Alex, again.
At the end of the day, we need to understand whether or not AI is being used by fraudsters in, I don't know, identity fraud or traditional fraud. And then it's up to us to first of all, understand if what we're seeing now was manipulated by an AI tool. And the second part is, can we have an AI tool ourselves who can detect that? Historically, let's take something as broad as synthetic identities, right? Those synthetic identities never had a real life representation. There was never like a real person associated with it. So if I have a good enough AI tool that can generate a deep fake of a person who will appear on the screen and look 99% legit, and I can associate that visual with a synthetic identity, now I have better chances of using that identity with avenues that I hadn't the opportunity to use before. So how do we detect whether or not AI tool was used in a specific fraud case? And can we use the same tools to actually automate that detection?
Definitely. Thanks, Alex, there. I'm looking at the queue, and I think we've answered just about everyone's questions. So I'll give kind of a brief moment. If you have any of those last dying questions, get them in now. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. In the meantime, Alex and Matt, I want to thank you for joining today's session, and everyone on the call for joining today's session. Hopefully folks got some value out of it, not only what's going on in the industry, but some practical applications to address them. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you, everyone. Next steps, you know where to find Unit21, unit21.ai. Encourage everyone, if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to Alex or Matt directly on LinkedIn, or request a demo on our website. We've got a lot of additional materials on GenAI and real-time monitoring that you can peruse through. Quick reminder that this recording will be available nearly instantaneously on this same page. So if you have folks within your organization who you think that this might be good information for, feel free to forward this page along to them. They're going to get kind of instant on-demand access to the session. And with that, again, thanks everyone for joining, and hope everyone has a great day. Cheers.